Obsession by itself is not going to solve the problem. Once you are obsessed with something, you have to create a bold vision. And the bold vision has to be easy to explain, easy to communicate. Because the easier you can explain to someone what is it that you're trying to do, the easier it gets for people to follow you. The easier it gets for people to come and join you. And the more people who join you help you achieve your vision, the easier it is for you to achieve your moonshot and help you solve something that you're actually obsessed about. Why do people fail in their vision? There are two reasons people fail in their vision. Number one is that most of the people are looking at the world as is rather than what the world can be. Now imagine, if you can't describe and imagine the world that you want the world to be, then you can't actually create it. And the second thing is, so many of us are constantly looking at the world as is rather than imagining the world that it can be. The part of visualization technique is, can you describe that world that you're seeing in such detail that anyone else can visualize it? The problem is, many of us come up with this vision that I want to create a company that has the largest market share. It has the big company that does this and this. Now, that is not something anyone can visualize, right? The trick in visualization is, when you close your eyes or when you ask someone to close their eyes, can they actually see the world that you are seeing? And I think the best example of that really is how Martin Luther King did. Now, he didn't talk about, hey, let's create a world where there is racial equality. He described the world in such a simple term. He says, imagine a world where a white boy is holding the hand of a black girl walking together. That is the world. It was so simple for anyone to visualize because that was so vivid. You can always see, yep, I can see that world and I like that world and I want to help you create that world. If he simply said, we want a world where there is racial equality, no one can visualize what that means, and no one would have created the revolution that helped him create that world. First thing everyone focuses on is really identifying the problem. In my view of the world, there are three types of people in this world. The people who see the problem, and every one of us actually is really, really good at seeing the problem and complaining about the problem. So let's just call them human beings. Some of us are really smart enough to be able to come up with a solution to those problems. And let's call them visionaries. And there's only one type of people that actually go out and do something about it. And this special group of people is what I call entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are problem solvers. So don't be a human being just simply complaining about the problem. Be an entrepreneur that actually does something about it. The entrepreneurs don't need to be about starting a company. At any point of time, when you see a problem and you do something about that problem, you are an entrepreneur. You can be an entrepreneur by starting a company, or you can be an entrepreneur within the company, as long as there is a problem that you care enough and you're obsessed about, and it is big enough that can someday help 1 billion people live a better life. Just remember, when you have a bold vision, there is a good chance everyone is going to laugh at you, and there is a good chance people are going to think you are absolutely crazy. Let me give you a real life example. I was going to Dublin to speak at an event, and I went through United Kingdom, and at London, the immigration officer asked me, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to Dublin. What are you going to be doing there? I'm going to be speaking at an event. What are you going to be talking about? I said, I really don't know yet. When I go there, I'm going to actually figure it out what I'm going to be speaking about. And the next thing he says, what do you do? And at that time, I was working on a company called Moon Express with the sole mission of creating a multi-planetary society and go to the moon. So I said, I'm going to the moon. And he looked at me and he says, we don't allow the crazy people in this country. So now, no more crazy talk. What do you do? And I said, we are building a company to go to the moon. And he looks at me this time really angry and says, one more answer like that, you're going to be staying in this country, you're not going anywhere. I thought about for a second, as opposed to really telling him that what is it that I'm working on, because to him it was such a crazy idea. How could you possibly think that you can do that? And to him, that means I was simply not being serious enough. So I told him, look, I'm a software engineer, I write software. He said, that's much more like you, because he thought I'm an Indian. What else could I possibly be doing other than writing a software? And guess what? That is exactly the kind of things you're going to run into. Because when you have that bold vision and you tell someone that that is the kind of things you're going to be doing, the people are not going to believe in you. People are going to laugh at you, but there are going to be people around you who are going to say, tell me how you're going to go about doing that. And those are the people you want on your team. The difference why there are so many successful companies being created in Silicon Valley versus all over the other world, it's not that there is not a talent in other parts of the world. It's not that talent exists in Silicon Valley. It is actually the mindset of how they think. So when you go out and tell somebody in London that you're going to go to the moon, they think you're not serious and they laugh at you. The same thing when you are in Silicon Valley and you tell people you want to go to the moon, the first thing they ask you is, that's awesome. How are you going to go out? What kind of fuel you're going to be using? What kind of rocket are you planning to use? Do you know have you already decided where you're going to land? When you go there, are you going to be looking for the water? What are you actually going to be doing? That means they already assume that you're going to go to the moon. To them, that's not a crazy idea. And these are the people, when you surround yourself with, they are suddenly starting to ask you the questions that you now have to think about how you're going to go out and executing on your moonshot. And this is the kind of things you always have to be watching out for. When I started Viome to disrupt healthcare, I told people that we are going to focus on making illness optional. That was our bold vision. So imagine you walk up to someone and saying, what do? I'm working on making illness optional, making illness truly a matter of choice, not a matter of bad luck. Most places, when they hear that, they think this guy has lost his mind. And that's exactly the kind of things when I did that, they were not only I was able to assemble some of the best and the brightest to help me, we got the funding because they realized this vision was actually possible. Not only this vision was possible, they saw the obsession in my eyes that I'm going to die trying to make this vision come true. As you can see, it wasn't as a far-fetched vision as most people thought, because now we have the technology at our disposal to be able to analyze the human body at a molecular level. This wouldn't have been possible 5 years ago, but today we have the technology to understand every single gene that's expressed in the human body. The physical body that we think of is being digitized. And when it's being digitized, that means you can use the artificial intelligence to understand exactly what is making people sick. When you can describe your vision and communicate to people and saying, we're trying to create a world where no one will ever be suffering. No one will be suffering from cancer. No one will be suffering from having lost their memory. No one have to be pricking their finger because they have diabetes. No one will be having heart attacks. No one will ever be suffering from any of these chronic diseases. People can imagine that world, and if you can describe them, the reason this world is now possible is because now we have the technology like sequencing that allows us to digitize our human body, and now we have the processing power and artificial intelligence to be analyzing this massive set of data. You'll be able to come up with the right set of nutrients that will reverse these chemical signatures and reverse the disease itself rather than simply suppress the symptoms. And the trick in all of these things is, once you become something is impossible, it becomes impossible for you and only you, not anyone else. So if you believe something is possible, even sky is not the limit. Sky is only the limit for the people because they create these imaginary barriers. The sky really does not exist. Sky is simply a figment of our imagination. If we can imagine a world that we want to create, we can actually create that world. Here's your daily task. Imagine the world that you're trying to create. Describe it in such a vivid detail that everyone else can understand your vision. Write it down in your journal and share with your tribe. Remember, more clearly you can see the world, easier it is for you to describe them in vivid details. Easier it is to communicate. Tomorrow we're going to be discussing the natural result of creating moonshot, disrupting industries. In the meantime, keep dreaming and shoot for the moon.